record. All right. We are recording now. Mr. Charles Haywood, how are you doing, sir?
I am pleased to be here and pleased to be back.
It's always good to talk to you. We text back and forth, pretty regularly, for me at least, because I'm very bad at keeping in touch with people. But yeah, so you're one of the people I try to stay in touch with because I really appreciate the type of person you are. You have a really good heart, and that's really easy to see once somebody gets to know you. So I really appreciate
that. May be the first time that any political person has said that to me, that I have a good heart. I'm going to sleep easy tonight, feeling good.
It might be because we're on the same side of this argument.
So yeah, but I am pleased to be here, and it is good to see you.
You had an interesting take on Tucker Carlson when he got fired, and I know it was a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to start off by talking about that, because you had said something about the best path forward for him was running for president.
Yeah.
What was your reasoning behind that? Can you break down like what you're seeing in front of us?
I mean, I think that was before Carlson announced that he was going to take his show to Twitter, and that has a variety of elements that we can talk about, which might change the analysis slightly. But fundamentally, at the time, people were discussing, well, Tucker can go to, Newsmax, or Tucker can go to these other places, or Tucker can set up his own infrastructure for running like a video streaming site of some kind, something like that, like a Tucker Carlson's Rumble or something like that. And those things fundamentally, I don't think meet the needs of someone like Carlson, which I read. Now, I did appear on his show, as you probably know, his Tucker Carlson Today show, but it's not like I have any special insight, or I do not, in fact, text regularly with Carlson. Though I do know people who text regularly with him. So I suppose in an extreme situation, I could probably get his number, but I do not otherwise have any links or knowledge of Carlson. But my read is that he's ambitious in the sense that he wants to accomplish a defined set of goals, making America a better place for Americans. And going to what amounts to a conservative ghetto is never going to advance that kind of program. And might make him money, but I don't read him as wanting money. Now, obviously, he's, I think, heir to the Swanson, or part of the Swanson TV dinner fortune.
Yeah, I think he married into that. Yeah.
Something like it. Whatever. He has plenty of money, right? He has more money than you, more money than me.
Oh yeah.
He has a private jet. So he's at that level of richness. So getting 25 million from Newsmax or some such thing isn't what he wants to do, is my read. So, but the only way he can not become irrelevant, and again, leaving this Twitter possibility aside, is by running for office, and the only office that makes him not irrelevant is president. I mean, maybe vice president, but you can't really run for vice president. Running for senator is a total waste of time. Everybody knows that everybody in Congress is a total clown. Left, right, center, whatever. I mean, I can't think of, well, Matt Gaetz, I guess, is not a total clown. And there's a couple other people, but like even on the right, most of the people are clowns. Like this Lauren Boebert chick, who just announced she's getting divorced because, whatever. I mean, these people are all clowns. And so joining that, if you're Carlson, doesn't hold any appeal. So therefore, the only thing he could do to maintain his relevance and continue his ambitions would be to run for president, which he obviously could do with great ease. I mean, it'd be trivially easy for him to do that. I don't know if did you see that he trolled Business Insider magazine about this?
No.
No, they somehow got a hold of his cell phone number, and they text him like, "Are you running for president?" He's like, "Yes, I'm announcing tomorrow." And they're like, "Really?" He's like, "No, I'm just a total dick. I like to say things like that." So but he could run for president very easily, and I would see certain advantages in him doing that, certainly.
Okay, so my idea of the political landscape, especially the presidency, has changed over the years. I had kind of dove real deep into libertarianism, called myself an ANCAP for a long time, and And it's not that I don't think that that consistency and that kind of like Misesian and Rothbardian worldview is totally without its merits.
Sure.
But we have to look at the beast in front of us, is kind of the way I look at it. And when I look at the like what we're dealing with in daily life, I'm looking at it as we're fighting this battle against this complete authoritarianism. Now, I am still trying to piece together. I think I kind of have like this picture of it in which it's like two different authoritarians that are kind of working in conjunction, but they're still kind of vying for power. And not two different authoritarians, different authoritarian factions that are working in conjunction but vying for power within this specific realm. And people like you and I are kind of sitting outside of it going, wait, none of this makes sense. I don't know what y'all are doing, but wait, you're not representing me at all. And it's something that I think majority of Americans have come to realize, like nothing that's going on within this elitist infrastructure like has any bearing. Not that it doesn't have bearing on us, but it doesn't represent like our thoughts, our ideas, what we think of the nation.
Right. And the key question there is, what percentage of Americans is that? And obviously there's a range of who have come to that realization. There's people who are, inner circle people like us, just we're totally aware, we're on top of it, we're just wonderful human beings. But there's a range of people who they're suspicious, for example, of that these things they're told about the war in Ukraine are all obvious lies, but they don't know what that means. I mean, I don't know what that means necessarily either, but there's a range of kind of awareness among people. But I think there's lots of people who aren't aware of that, of the fact that we are ruled by a decrepit regime, and you do have this vying among authoritarian factions, but we're fundamentally ruled by bad people. What percentage of people don't see that at all is actually a great mystery to me, and something that I would be very, very much like to find out, but I have no way of finding out.
It seems to me like a lot of people from our position that look at the world in a similar way as we do have a tendency to want to go after, as we had talked about before on one of the podcasts, a Caesar. They want this like right-wing authoritarian figure that's going to force our politics and our ideas down other people's throats. Whereas in my perspective, the way I'm looking at, the way I view it, that's not necessarily what we need. What I'm thinking is, as a coach, it's like a Bill Belichick type figure that he can rally you to take action, but the action that needs to be taken is within your own life and changing yourself and completely transforming you.
That only works if you have a substrate of virtue. That is, it works on you. Maybe it works on me because presumably I have some minor substate of virtue left with good heart. But I think we're past the point where coaching works on most people.
Okay.
Most people are so atomized, so ill-formed. I mean, look at Gen Z, or however you define it. You have these insane polls where 20 or 25% of Gen Z, which I guess is people in their 20s, late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, identify as LGBTQ, whatever. I mean, this is obviously completely insane, and not a reflection of any reality. But coaching people like that is just a lost cause. I think you can make people change, but fundamentally you have to have a carrot and the stick. And traditionally, that's what's always used for social changes: the carrot and the stick. And people who can't abide that decide that they need to live elsewhere, or they are otherwise removed from the body politic. So I'm all for coaching, but I think we're past the era where we could have coaching. Unfortunately,
I think a lot of that is because people act on incentives, and socially it's incentivized. But if you got a person in office that can mobilize people like you and me to be more vocal and more upfront about the way, and I'm not talking about us because obviously we talk about this stuff constantly, but I'm saying like people that like I work for a retail store.
Mhm.
All right. Those guys, some of them think about politics and they'll kind of chatter back and forth, but it's very vanilla and it's very like, and when you start bringing up the more audacious things that the government has done, that they're like, wait, what are you talking about? Right. Like I just started reading today I started reading One Nation Under Blackmail by Whitney Webb. Right.
Okay. I've heard of
And
it.
so like if you start tying like it pulls off of a lot of the threads that Operation Gladio pulls off of, talks about the Operation Underworld and the integration of the mafia within the intelligence and throughout the 40s and all, and it really like, but it ties it all together from the 40s to today. And it kind of it paints that picture. It like draws it linearly, and it's 2-volume book. And so far I'm through chapter 1. It's really good. I'm really enjoying it. And but you start bringing this out to normies, so to speak. Yeah, they step back. But if you have a guy that's stepping up there saying these are our morals and this is what's happening to your children, blase, blase, we have to step up and be the vocal majority and not allow the vocal minority to step all over us. A lot of these guys, especially like I'm thinking of like 30-year-olds with young children, they're going to stand up and say, wait, I don't want you subjecting my children to these things. And so that's where I'm thinking of a coach, like somebody that really is able to motivate and inspire. And I'm wrong.
You're more optimistic than I am. I mean, I think we're disproving my good heart, but it's fundamentally, if you're a 30-year-old, you have a child, you're a husband and wife, and you have a child, you're if you have the kind of job where your employer doesn't care about your politics, what school you send your kid to, whether you have your pronouns on your Facebook page or what have you, or whoever the hell uses Facebook now, but you get the idea. Then I think that you can stand up and be counted. But the fact is that left-wing people care deeply and get their meaning from forcing other people in the elites and in kind of large sections of society to toe the line in their permanent revolution. And ultimately, even if it's only, say, people who work at universities who are forced to adopt a certain approach and must keep their children in a kind of school where the teachers abuse them by teaching them various forms of perversions, that'll trickle down to the 30-year-old eventually. It's like communism, right? Everything ultimately trickles down to those people because they control those people's employment, and ultimately those people can't escape it. And if they stand up and be counted now because the coach inspires them, Biden runs around telling everybody that white supremacy is the biggest problem. And when he says white supremacy, that's not what he means at all. What he means is
Nationalism.
right, or not even that narrow. I mean, what he means is anybody who opposes what the regime wants is a white supremacist, because that's a handy, what Scott Adams, who I have mixed opinions on, but Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy, calls a linguistic kill shot. That is, it's a design to prevent any discussion, because everyone who disagrees with the regime is a white supremacist, even if that person is black, right? You see this all the time. Like, the black people are like the black face of white supremacy. And, you see that actual phrase all the time. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But the fact that, I mean, it's a sign of a true regime, in the sense of a tyrannical regime, that they can say things that are obviously ludicrous with a straight face and expect large numbers of people to believe that. I mean, you see this trope in the book 1984. Obviously, somewhere there's I forget the exact. There's a Chinese fable or legend similar where the emperor calls everyone together and asks them whether the cow is a horse, and the people who refuse to agree the cow is a horse get executed because they're too independent, and something along those lines. I can't remember the exact story, but I mean that's what the purpose of telling us these insane lies is for the regime. But ultimately, if you're the 30-year-old who says, I don't want my children, my kindergartner, to be told that he needs to consider whether he's a girl, you're a white supremacist. You need to lose your job. You need to be punished. You need ultimately to be sent to the camps or what have you. So I hate to say it, but I just don't think coaching people to stand up in the sense of stand up and talk is going to cut it.
Well,
Negative. Sorry.
Well, where I was going to go with this was, I think that when it comes to that, like that person that can rally the troops and create that solidarity, Tucker Carlson could be that.
Yes,
And,
I will agree with that because of his charisma and reach.
right, and that's where I was going with it.
Sorry,
but I don't think he's a strong man.
No. Well, that is a fascinating question. So Tucker Carlson definitely fits into that coach category. I agree. And sorry to hijack your earlier line of thought. Thank you for letting me ramble.
No, you're fine. That's why we do this.
It's but I think you're right that Carlson does not seem to have the kind of personality that fits a traditional strongman. On the other hand, it's also true that cometh the hour, cometh the man. Who really knows what Tucker Carlson thinks inside his head? Maybe what we see is simply what works for him now. I mean, it's hardly like when he's on Fox News that he could start ordering people executed. And I mean, maybe he just has that. And I think strongmen are frequently seen to have kind of negative personalities, like very icy. But like people like Napoleon. I mean, Napoleon was outstanding at compartmentalization, but he was actually kind of an interesting, friendly guy. And he let women like walk all over him all the time, or at least he let the women he was interested in walk all over him. So he wasn't this one-dimensional kind of guy. It's hard to get a sense for the personality of historical figures, especially in the pre-TV age. But I wouldn't rule out that Napoleon's personality was that dissimilar to that of Carlson. So you can imagine Carlson in a different situation saying, well, I'm going to be a strongman. And you're probably familiar with this quote, but they asked Napoleon how he became emperor of France. Have you ever heard this quote?
I don't think so.
So someone asked him when he crowned himself emperor. He said, "How?" The story may be apocryphal, but he said, "How did you become emperor of France?" And he said, "I came across the crown of France lying in the street, and I picked it up with my sword." And so, if you're Carlson, maybe the right circumstances lead you to do something similar.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't look at him. I kind of look at him as a goofy, kind of jolly person. So it's just, I don't.
That's my point. I think those two things can coexist. I think you can be a jolly strongman. I think it is a mistake to think. I mean, because let's say you're Carlson and you're now King Tucker the First, or whatever. Maximum leader of what used to be the United States, Tucker Carlson. You can be jolly all the time and still realize that certain things have to be done in order to improve the lot of the citizens, protect the citizens from bad people, and so on. And you can still be very jolly. I mean, I think I think ideological killers like Lenin or Pol Pot are much less jolly because they're entirely driven by the ideology. I need to establish my ideology. If you're Tucker Carlson and you're like, well, it's time for some justice, and these people mutilated children. So, well, time to go. I mean, maybe you're jolly. I don't know. I've never done it myself.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you're just such a sociopath. Nothing makes you sad. Like you're just like, yeah.
Maybe, but I mean, I don't think he's a sociopath. I mean,
no, I was just making a joke.
Franco was the same way. Speaking of strongman, I mean, he wasn't jolly. Franco was kind of taciturn, but he didn't. I don't think Franco spent, and it wasn't like right-wing people don't tend to kill a lot of people by historical standards, obviously. But Franco, he was, sent people off to be executed and so on. I don't think he lost a lot of sleep over it. I don't know if he was jolly, but I think, but we're kind of getting a bit of feel. I can now thinking about it out loud, I can totally see Tucker Carlson as a strongman, particularly if he had lieutenants who kind of did the heavy lifting.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, especially if because it's not like when you're in that position of power especially over what 350 million people or however many people live in the United States. It's not like you're overseeing every single decision. It's you're compartmentalizing. You're sending out, the kind of this is the rule of law. This is the way we're taking care of this. This is the way it goes. Go do your jobs. And so you just kind of send it out.
Right. I mean, and that's the way it works in practice. And it's one of the reasons why Trump is so terrible as a actual administrator, because he's a terrible judge of character, and he doesn't attract the kind of people who are fanatically loyal to him. What you need is people who have the kind of charisma, which again, I think Carlson probably has, having met him briefly in person myself, that he attracts the kind of people who will say, I'm going to work for Tucker Carlson. I'm going to do what Tucker Carlson tells me, but more importantly, I'm going to advance what I think Tucker Carlson wants, and without my primary goal being looking out for myself, but rather for looking out for this greater whole, which I think is embodied within Tucker Carlson. So I'm really warming to this idea of Tucker Carlson as strongman, which I had not really considered. Maybe I do need to get his number. I can text him. I'm like, have you ever considered pulling a Franco? And maybe he'll say, no, I didn't. But now that you suggested it, I'll start tonight, and I can get reaction.
The problem I always had with Trump is he didn't understand how government worked. Like you and I, we've read enough books. We can kind of like, all right, like, yeah, you can't be working this way. You're not the one in charge, really. You are, but you're not. Once you put those people out there in the positions of power, then they're kind of running the show. You can't keep up with all this stuff. And we understood that. He had no idea. He's thinking about it like a CEO of a business, and
sure. Totally different.
That it screwed him like really bad with that.
Yeah, but I mean, it definitely screwed him. I think even worse, he just is a bad judge of character. That is, if even with that truth, if he'd surrounded himself with, say, 50 carefully chosen people and put them in the positions of power, they could have actually accomplished a lot. Because you can go around to various administrative agencies and so on, firing people or routing around people and so on. But, and this is one of my favorite stories, all you really need to know is that the week after he was elected, Jared and Ivanka, Jared DeSantis, Kushner, his son-in-law, spent a week in the Adriatic on David Geffen's yacht. I mean, David Geffen is a homosexual music mogul, far left, wealthy regime member. And the first thing they did when their father and father-in-law got elected was to spend a week with this cretin. I mean, those are not the kind of people advising you who will ever lead to anything good. And same thing with like Steve Bannon. Look, I mean, Steve Bannon's an interesting guy and so on, though the fact he dresses like a clown should disqualify him from but he's not a reliable guy. He's a bull in a china shop and he can accomplish certain things, but he's not. What you want is a guy who's self-effacing. You don't want a guy like Bannon who wants to be the center of attention, because only one person should be the center of attention, which is, I almost said Il Duce. I should not say that, but Tucker Carlson in our example should be the center of attention,
right?
You can, and of course Trump's whole administration leaked like a sieve. Yes, he faced a whole bunch of insurmountable obstacles, no doubt. So yeah. I'm not totally faulting him, but I think Carlson might be able to overcome some of these other obstacles.
No, but that's interesting because you brought up different examples than I was thinking of, because I'm thinking John Bolton, and I'm thinking the reason that Trump appointed John Bolton was because Trump doesn't know anything about politics. So he just asked a Republican, who should I put in this position? And they're like, John Bolton. And he's like, okay. And so I'm thinking it's the ignorance, and you're actually looking at his inner circle. I wasn't even thinking his inner circle. I was thinking about his appointments.
Both are bad. I mean, I can't think of offhand of anyone in his inner circle who, you saw this after the 2020 election. That is, he surrounded himself with these people, Sidney Powell and all these people who took his arguments in a completely the wrong direction. Yeah. Yes, of course he was right about the substance of it. And then of course he he failed to do everything. He failed to support the January 6th, the electoral justice protest. He failed to issue a blanket pardon before he left office. And he says all this stuff now. I mean, I'm sorry, we're getting off topic with
No,
Trump.
that's fine because I find this interesting. So
That's all the stuff he's going to do differently now. But I mean, there's just no chance that's going to happen. I mean, I support Trump being elected president, but not because I think he'd be a good president, because I think it would cause an overreaction by the left, which, and since I'm an accelerationist catastrophist, I desire that. But yeah, there's no chance. Let's say in some magical world, Trump was elected president, he was actually allowed to take office, which I regard as vanishingly unlikely. That the latter, I think he could easily be elected, but he would never be allowed to take office. But if he did, and he was just let to run the government like George W. Bush was allowed to run the government, you could accomplish nothing at all.
Right.
Your earlier point, it'd be a complete waste of everyone's time. It'd just be another 4 years closer to my death with nothing exciting happening. What a bore.
Am I right in my assessment that Flynn was the only person within Trump's administration that was worth a damn, and that's why they had to get rid of him so fast?
That seems right. I'm not an expert on Flynn, but I got to say, Flynn's kind of I don't mean this overall, but in a narrow sense, Flynn's a moron. I mean, like, if the government ever shows up and wants to talk to me, I'm just going to say no. I mean, because it's obvious they're a bunch of liars. Like, if the FBI shows up at my door, which is unlikely because I'm a legal stickler, and anyway, my door is pretty far from the street. But like, why he even talked to the FBI so they could like lie about what he said and then indict him is beyond me. I mean, that shows someone who doesn't really understand what's going on, whatever his other virtues may be.
Right. Okay. All right. So before we get back on Tucker, I want to ask, I look at Ron DeSantis as George W. Bush.
Interesting. Can you expand on that?
I just think he's a typical politician. And I don't think he's fighting back. I mean, like, he's trying to conserve like 20, like the politics of 2010.
Yeah.
He's not trying to instill any amount of actual freedom that we would consider. And he's just like trying to like hold on to the politics of 2010 and not actually make any forward progress for a right-wing movement.
Yeah, I think that's a good analysis generally from what I can tell. I mean, I know a lot of people who are fans of DeSantis, though at least temporarily, his star seems to have peaked in terms of people talking about him. And I note that we haven't been talking about him. We've been talking about Trump, right? I saw the other day Daryl Cooper, who goes by Murder Maid on Twitter. Good guy, friend of mine. He said, I'm gonna have to start muting people because I have all these people I follow who do nothing but talk about DeSantis and Trump and like yell at each other, and it's really boring. So I have some sympathy for that too. But I'm not to the point of muting people, but I try to stay off Twitter. Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. No Twitter for me most of the time. And all of Lent. I was off Twitter for Lent and I felt spiritually refreshed.
I bet you did.
I
got back on Twitter during Lent.
But it's not anyway. But DeSantis, I mean, one of the complaints I have about DeSantis, in addition to the ones you listed, which is he does seem to not want to make big enough changes. I mean, he seems disciplined, but he also seems a bit autistic. Like, I don't know if he has the common charisma touch. And it's related to my complaint, which is he's a lawyer. I mean, I used to be a lawyer. Lawyers are sharply limited as charismatic leaders because they're, by training and by self-selection, they're risk averse and trained to make others make the decisions. Now, I agree. Some people may say, well, how can it be about DeSantis? He's taking all sorts of actions that get him attacked in the media and so on. And that's true up to a point, but it's also the political shtick that he's chosen. So it's not, in that frame, it's not as risk averse as it might seem. So doing something truly risky would be, I don't know, saying we should bring back sodomy laws. You know, when DeSantis starts saying stuff like that, then I'll start to think he's not a calculating politician. I don't know if he's be as bad as George W. Bush, because, you know, George W. Bush really sucked. I typically append God rot him after I refer to George W. Bush, but I don't think I think the DeSantis boomlet, where people like you and I thought maybe he was the guy, never really got off the ground. But it's a long way from here to November 24, so we'll see.
Yeah, I was always kind of iffy about him because I had a lot of people in my ear telling me that he was really on the payroll of Israel. And I was like, okay, so he's a Zionist. All right. So there's that. That's always a lot of fun to deal with. And I'm watching the moves he's making, and I'm like, okay, like for 2023, he seems extremely right. Okay, but I'm 43 years old. I've been around a bit. And I'm like, this guy has the politics of Bill Clinton.
Yeah. And as a state governor with a legislature that supports him, he can actually get a fair bit done.
Yeah.
That wouldn't translate into the national level.
Yeah.
I used to think that he would be almost as good as Trump for the left being afraid. I mean, my perpetual theory, borne out by history, is that the left will overreact to any possibility that the right will actually gain power, as opposed to fake power like George W. Bush or something like that. And that is good, because I regard that as tending towards the goals that I want to, as the Marxists say, to heighten the contradictions. But I'm not sure DeSantis would do that. Then maybe he'd just show up in DC, and then they would just not do what he said, and it'd be a waste of everyone's time. I guess, I mean, but like I say, it's a long way to November 24. And the one thing we can all agree on is that a lot of, unlike in the past, a lot of things that we don't expect and when they happen will seem completely out of left field are going to happen in the next 18 months.
Oh yeah. And we have to understand that DeSantis is a politician, and he understands politics, and he's good at it. And so, I mean, so
maybe he'll pull. I mean, I don't think that the other candidates who have been floated, Mike Huckabee, Nikki Haley.
Right.
A friend of mine once said, to state these things is to refute them. Hey, President Nikki Haley, you laugh and you like move on to your next beer. So that stuff is just a sideshow. It's like the world's hairiest woman or something like that at the circus sideshow. But I think we could easily get weird curveballs. I mean, for example, continuing with the theme of this evening, Tucker Carlson. I think it's unlikely, but what do I know what Tucker Carlson's thinking? And maybe his Twitter thing isn't going to work out because Musk hires a new CEO who insists that he kowtow to advertisers' political demands, and he has to leave Twitter. And he's like, well, Haywood's right. I need to run for president.
So, all right, let's get back on Tucker Carlson, because that's where I was wanting to go next. I don't think there's enough influence on any of the other political hopefuls of 2024 to really even discuss. I think Tucker Carlson, out of the whole field, is the only one that could give Trump problems. I think the DeSantis Trump thing, I kind of feel like that's kind of already played out. And DeSantis hasn't even announced. And I'm thinking the reason he hasn't announced is because he recognizes that he's getting his ass kicked already.
Right. And I think the analysis is right, that he understands politics, and he's not the kind of guy. He's a guy who calculates carefully.
Right. So with Tucker, with the Twitter thing, what could Twitter do for him? Because there are more people on Facebook. Right. It's not like Twitter is. My parents aren't on Twitter. Like Tucker Carlson's audience, let's say his audience that are 50 and above that have stopped watching Fox, they're not on Twitter. Yes. So how does this help him?
The boomer audience is a problem, but I think that in order for Twitter to be beneficial for Carlson, it is necessarily the case that Musk has to rapidly advance his stated plans to turn Twitter from Twitter into what he calls X, the everything app. And my assumption is that initial assumption is that they were working together for this because both doing that would advance this goal. Whether they Musk denies this, but of course, people lie all the time. Who knows? But Musk needs to hugely expand the capabilities of Twitter beyond just allowing embedded videos, which is kind of trivial, including things like streaming apps and so on, like on a Roku or Apple TV or what have you. But even there, I don't know how many boomers do streaming apps. I think that it's possible, however, I mean, it's never going to be possible to capture the audience of people who simply turn on the TV when they get home from work and leave it on Fox or whatever till bedtime, and therefore they watch Tucker Carlson. But it is possible to make it very easy for boomer type people to watch Tucker Carlson if they are willing to take any action whatsoever to do that. And I think that Musk's ability to take unexpected actions that tend in this direction because of his decisiveness and his having fired all the dead weight at Twitter will probably lead to some set of circumstances, unexpected set of circumstances that allows Carlson to achieve the goals of maintaining his relevance and reach. But I can't say specifically what that is. And so maybe I'm just making this all up in my head. It's not a good sign that Musk hired this cretinous woman as the new CEO of Twitter, because her entire shtick is, the premise of much of the analysis is that she's an advertising executive and will therefore be able to persuade advertisers to come back. But that mistakes the problem. Advertisers aren't staying away. Advertisers are merely staying away because they're acting as arms of the regime. I mean, this is entirely obvious, not because they have some concerns that can be addressed with a better deal or something like that. They're simply attempting to influence the political process, and there's no solution for that. So the only possible path is for this woman to tell Musk that he needs to go back to the old Twitter in order to get his advertising revenue. And it's disconcerting and contrary to my general, not faith in Musk, but belief that Musk has a high level of competence, that he's hired this woman.
Yeah, I have a lot of issues with this woman, but I have a lot of issues with anything relating to the WEF. So that's that's what I spend most of my time railing against.
So the fundamental question there is, I've said for years, that probably 5 or 6 years, I mean, even though I've been saying for a long time that driverless cars will never arrive, and I've been proven right so far, and that Musk is a little bit of a grifter, I've always had great admiration for Musk. I've also said for 5 or 6 years that Musk will have to break the regime or the regime will break him. And to the extent he knuckles under to the demands of the regime as exemplified by the WEF, well, that's tending more towards them breaking him. So we'll see. On the other hand, he's been saying some crazy right-wing things since he hired the woman. I don't know. Did you see that meme he posted with Pepe the Frog? It was basically, I'm very bad at telling jokes, but it was Pepe the Frog, which of course is supposedly a big white supremacist right-wing symbol or whatever that the young'uns used. And said Musk's text was the Constitution explained. And the first panel said, a sort of frog dressed up reading something, and it said, the First Amendment is for me to share memes with my friends. And then the second panel was, the Second Amendment is to deal with people who try to stop me from sharing memes with my friends. But it was like radically right wing. It was the kind of thing that would easily have gotten you banned, so I mean, he said a bunch of stuff, and he was comparing George Soros to Magneto, the villain, and he doubled down. Like people were like, well, you're Elon Musk, you're an anti-Semite, the Holocaust. I mean, leaving aside that Soros was an active Nazi collaborator,
right?
I know it. And then he only left Hungary in 1949 because the communists, he wasn't able to collaborate adequately with the communists. He wanted to, but 47 or something. But he refused to be cowed. Like he just doubled down and said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. Magneto was much nicer than George Soros." So maybe there's hope yet. We'll see.
Maybe he's taking adequate steps to push himself right. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, like I talk big about all these people like they're my buddies, but I'm farther away from Elon Musk than I am from Tucker Carlson. So what it's worth, which is nothing.
Yeah, yeah. But we're here speculating. We're having a good time. So I'm thinking whenever it comes to Twitter, I don't know what how this X app is supposed to work. I know I've heard like speculation that people think that he wants to make something similar to WeChat that's in China, which is kind of like the everything app. So there's this centralization of all data that you have to worry about when you look at something like this. And using Tucker Carlson as bait to catch fish. I mean, basically, he's fishing for more data and using Tucker Carlson as bait to pull in more data.
It's a risk.
I wonder, I know that Tucker and Megyn Kelly are close friends. And this was actually something she was talking about yesterday. And I'd been thinking about it all day yesterday. Like, man, this whole data, like purging and pulling all the data into one area where you could do your banking and video and TV and everything, all your communications through one app. That's really dangerous. Like, you don't want like that much information running through one person.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, James Poulos was talking about this the other day. I don't know if you know him, but another good guy. He, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if someone's going to do it, it's entirely possible in our kind of society with our level of virtue and what people demand that someone's going to do it. So if you can't, if someone's going to do it, it's better that someone who you have some hope in is hope in is the wrong word, but some confidence in is going to do it. And I will say that, so Musk, for example, claims to moving to have encrypted DMs on Twitter. That's a move away from data collection. Right. And we should also remember that the government already, centralization is a bit of a chimera, because the government already hoovers up all this information, and all these kind of supposedly disparate entities which have this data rush and fall over themselves to give it to the government whenever they want, or whenever they think the government wants to punish people. I mean, this is very much like the rule in Nazi Germany, where the Hitler was notorious for not giving clear orders and having competing power centers. And so what people would do is what's called moving toward the Führer. That is trying to discern what Hitler wanted and executing that. So, for example, all corporations do that eagerly now. They're like, well, maybe we have white supremacists who are, using our credit cards, and we'll rush to give that data to the FBI. So the centralization isn't going to change that. And to the extent there's things like encrypted messages, that's obviously you can never fully trust that, but there's some level of trust you can place in that. I mean, and it's, as you say, it's not clear what X app would be, but the most important part is not so much the media sharing cat memes or whatever, but it's the payments. Because right now, payments are a choke point for the regime, where the regime, like as they did in Canada with the Freedom Convoy, can terrorize normal people at an instant's notice. And it's all done on a continuous low level with kind of moving toward the Führer stuff. But obviously, in with the regime regards to an emergency, they can order payments to be shut down. So if you if Twitter would be subject to the same kinds of government orders, obviously, but you could imagine a payment structure being set up that was resilient in some way to, and I actually long ago was a M&A lawyer, looked into payments structure, so I know a little bit about it. But the payments, you could imagine a resilient payment structure which is resistant to government interference, but most of all is resistant to any kind of woke censorship. So if you're a gun store or whatever, things that are disapproved by the regime, the X payment system makes a lot of sense. I mean, PayPal is a ludicrous. So, for example, I have a couple of different PayPal accounts, and I try to avoid using them because PayPal sucks. So, but the other day, I went to one, which I don't use frequently, but I mean, it wasn't like I had to like show them who it was, but I was not allowed to log in until I gave them a phone number. I couldn't log into my own account until I gave them a phone number that worked, that could receive a code. And they didn't say like, sorry, we need a phone number. They just demanded a phone number in order for me to log in. And so you can, I think there's a significant demand for a better payments structure, payment system structure. And I think Musk could do that. I don't dispute that centralization is a potential problem, but you know, you go to war with the people you have, and if it's better than the other thing, maybe that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one thing I've said constantly about Elon Musk, or you know, any of these other guys, Vivek Ramaswamy. It's like, you know, for today we have the same enemies. Tomorrow we might be enemies. But it's like, what am I supposed to do? At least right now they're aiming the gun in the right direction. Like, I don't know what else I can do about it.
Right. You go to war with the friends you have, and
Right.
You know, Musk is an odd guy, right? He's, you know, has an irregular personal life, but I think in many, I'm a big space fan, so that resonates with me, and I'm a techno optimist. So sometimes I wonder about that now lately.
Yeah.
But I think that I think we could do a lot worse than being ruled by Elon Musk. Like, if someone gave me the choice of, we're going to wipe out the entire United States federal government regime, and we're going to, and as well as all the blue state, like New York regimes and so on, all those people are going to be sent to pick sugar beets. And Elon Musk is now going to be God Emperor. And what he says goes. I'd take that deal instantly. I'd be like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, it's better than Biden.
Well,
And the bureaucracy.
Right. I mean, I think that might create all sorts of weird effects and impacts. But the fact is, anybody who fires 80% of Twitter, thereby turning Twitter overnight into a hugely profitable company, unfortunately not net of debt service, but nonetheless hugely profitable, is the kind of guy who can get. He's a kind of guy who can get things done. He's the kind of guy who can cut the Gordian knot. So no one's offering that deal, but I would take it.
Yeah. Well, and there's not going to be, you're not going to run into a situation where any of these elites are going to be perfect. They're not going to be like us. We're not going to, it's like a buddy of mine, he always compared Elon Musk to Prometheus, right? And Prometheus gave fire to humans. And he said, but even though Prometheus was acting on behalf of humanity, he was still a Titan. He was never human. We're never going to be the same thing. And so we're never going to look at everything eye to eye and see everything at the same level. And I was like, that's a good point, you know?
One point. I mean, if Elon Musk became God Emperor, as unlikely as that is, he might do a lot of weird and stupid stuff, transhumanism and what have you. But the average person's life, to the extent that person wasn't a parasite, would become infinitely better, simply because he would be relieved. It is back to your ANCAP days. He'd be relieved of this insane burden of the regime, for lack of a better term, because he could then go lead his own life. Would Elon Musk promulgate the social edicts that I think are beneficial to society? No, of course not. But whatever. I mean, the fact is, if he would allow everyone else to just do their thing, and not to sound like a libertarian, we would all be a lot better off. I mean, the problem is that the percentage of rank parasites in America is extremely high. That is, people who provide no or negative net social value to society, like 99% of the people who work at universities, yet are paid huge amounts of money stolen from everybody else or pulled from thin air. If those people disappeared, by disappeared, I mean their jobs disappeared, that would create tremendous social unrest. So it's not as simple as just saying Elon Musk is God Emperor and lets everyone do what he or she wants. There's, you have to deal with the blowback. And so I'm not sure that someone like Musk understands that.
Now, one thing that I'm thinking now, as we're moving forward, I'm starting to think about rhetoric. And Trump has no rhetoric. He's just this kind of blusterous fool. And with the release of the Durham report, do you think that somebody like Carlson would look at Trump's inability to fight that in a clear manner as he could, and he would coach Trump or engage in the political spectrum, maybe announce for president and do it in such a way that says, hey, I'm doing this because for the good of the nation, because what has been released here recently?
It's a good idea, getting a hook if he's thinking of announcing at all, which again, I have no idea about. It's an excellent point that rhetoric is completely absent. I mean, I can't think of anybody who's a politician who has any rhetorical ability whatsoever, like exceeding mine. Like, I mean, I can give a decent speech when I have to. I talk a bit slower. I look at people and so on, but no one's going to mistake me for Pericles, and so no one's going to mistake anybody for Pericles in modern life. But someone like Carlson does, in fact, have that ability. Whether or not he hooks onto something like that, like the Durham report or something to announce, it doesn't really matter. Someone like Carlson could simply announce, and the problem is that it's a very difficult challenge for the regime if someone like Carlson or just Carlson announces, because there's no possible avenue of attack. I mean, sure, they'll try to use like Carlson is a white supremacist, but no one cares because he's a known quantity. Unless they find out that he has some kind of sordid past behavior that people are appalled at, there's just no avenue of attack, and anybody who's sent to actually talk to him directly is going to get hammered. And Trump, in fairness, is pretty good at hammering people, but he can't combine it with the charisma and the rhetoric, and those things are a very powerful combination. I mean, we're kind of talking ourselves into Carlson for president, aren't we?
Yeah, it seems that way. But I'm just thinking. I'm trying to think, because I'm thinking, all right, this Durham report, it's just damaging enough to the Clintons and the FBI for Trump to make a fool out of himself talking about it.
Yeah.
There's not enough there for anybody to take any action from the DOJ standpoint.
Well, they wouldn't. It was, so it doesn't matter.
Well, right. But so it's just like, it's basically like Durham basically just gave the Democrats the win, because they basically gave them the same talking points as the 2020 election. And it's just something for Trump to focus on and obsess about that people get tired of hearing about.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously the election was rigged, not so much in the rigged voting machine sense. I mean, it could have been.
Well, there was a shadow campaign that Time Magazine told us about.
Right. It's that kind of stuff. It's all the other kind of rigging. There's the ballot harvesting. Trump has been the subject of by at least an order of magnitude, the greatest propaganda campaign in human history. And it's actually amazing that he's as popular as he is in the teeth of that. But he doesn't do himself any favors by repeating himself. Repetition is always bad, right? In any area of life. No one likes a bore. No one wants the guy. Well, they want to, and he tried to spice it up by talking about what he's going to do differently next time. I'm not sure anyone believes that. But certainly his town hall performance on CNN last week was a sign of Trump does stuff like nobody else can. I mean, DeSantis wouldn't have done any of that stuff. He would have approached it in a lawyerly fashion rather than in a spectacular fashion. So that's why we all keep talking about Trump, right?
Yeah, he puts on a show. I mean, he is a show. Yeah, it's just.
I mean, I like the show, and and the most amazing thing about it, of many amazing things, is how old is he? Almost 80.
Yeah, he's something like that.
When I'm 80, I always tell my kids he needs to learn to change my diapers. I mean, what the hell? I mean, but he's out there sticking it to the man. So
right.
I mean, I think Trump has enormous amounts of defects, but like a lot of people, I can't help but admire him at some level.
Yeah, I feel that. All right, so Tucker Carlson announces a new show on Twitter. Neither of us have any insight how do you think this plays out though? Do you think that this gives Twitter like this boost where people start flooding to Twitter to watch and see Tucker Carlson, and therefore you get some subscriptions, more subscriptions coming in? Twitter gets a little bit more money. They're starting to move in that X direction. Or do you think this is a bad place? I'm not sure it's a good place. It has enough exposure, right?
I think you're right. I think the normie, if you define you and me as normies, answer is it's not a play that seems like it really gets Carlson, or for that matter, Musk, what he wants. My hesitation is this is so obvious in a sense that there's almost certainly more to the plan.
You know what?
Go ahead.
I just thought about it. Like if Tucker is coming on, let's say he, instead of filling that 8 o'clock spot like he did at Fox, he's filling the 7 o'clock slot.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Hannity is going to be in the 8 o'clock slot. Mm-hmm. So now if Sean Hannity's talking about Tucker on Twitter, oh, Tucker did this, and there's these viral moments, CNN's talking about Tucker, MSNBC's talking about Tucker, then everybody's leaving those channels to go check out Tucker because he said something that everybody's talking about, and he's getting these viral moments. Yeah. It's free advertising. That might be the play.
Could be. And I mean, I think that Carlson is a smart guy who's surrounded with smart people who are loyal to him. I mean, I don't know who those people are, but that goes back to my earlier discussion. No one has any idea, at least ways I don't, no one has any idea who Carlson's lieutenants are, but he must have outstanding lieutenants. Mm. And DeSantis is a little bit this way too. He has good people around him, but the thought process of going through this is so obvious and so obviously crucially important. I mean, you're Tucker Carlson, you're 52 or whatever. This is really the make or break moment for your life, or a make or break moment for your life. So you're not just going to I hope you're not just going to cavalierly go on Twitter and announce my new thing is to go on Twitter, because what does that mean? What is it? But ideally, you'd have cooked something up with Musk behind the scenes, how you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and how this is going to play out. And obviously, you know that's not going to play out exactly as you hope, but you have various plans and so on. Mm. It would be a big disappointment. I've been disappointed by plenty of people in my life if they were cavalier about it and just going on Twitter to be on Twitter. That's not going to work out. I totally agree with that analysis.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the idea is to make yourself the news that the news is talking about.
Yeah, but there's an easy regime response, which is to simply not talk about him. Right.
Yeah, I mean, they can't seem to do that with Trump. I don't think they'll do that with Tucker either.
The town hall. I mean, my first reaction, I didn't watch this town hall thing live. I never watched TV, or almost never watched TV. My first reaction was, what the hell? CNN had like a live town hall. That wasn't very wise. I mean, like even I know that. I mean, even aside from like having found hearing how it went for them, I'm like, why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, like, haven't they learned anything?
Yeah, I still haven't watched it. I've just been watching reactions to it because I find it funny.
I watched some clips, but I read like the transcript in essence. And, I mean, he's a showman, like you said. Yeah. A preternatural sense of timing, right? There's this scene where this woman, the moderator, is attacking him over and over. He says, hey, let me speak. And then she lets him speak. He's like, you're a really nasty woman, And then he goes off. Like, the timing is impeccable. Like if you or I were trying to say that, we would probably start out with that, right? We'd say, you're a really nasty woman. Let me speak. But instead he reverses it. He says, let me speak, and then waits for and then he's speaking. So he just interjects it and she can't say anything. She's just I mean, we can't do that. Like normal human beings don't think that way. So it gives credit.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think we've like pounded this to death. I'm all tuckered out. So
that's a good pun.
That's what I'm naming the show. All tuckered out.
That's good. I like it.
But I don't I mean, obviously we're speculating, we're having a bit of fun, and it was say you put that tweet out, and I was like, I got some questions about this. I want to talk to you, and I knew we'd kind of go all over the board because there's all kinds of things to talk about, and
Well, I've refined my thoughts. Thank you. I've refined my thoughts on this topic. I am more bullish on Tucker for president now than when I started. Though my real hope is Tucker for strongman.
Tucker for strong.
I think we need to we need to have Joe Biden is a fitting last president of the United States, and Tucker is good for
The first Caesar.
well, Caesar not exactly, because Caesar implies typically like more violence in the coming to power. What would he be? He'd be
Well, the early Caesars weren't violent. It was the later Caesars that were violent.
He can be the Doge of Venice. The Doge was a
The
elected,
Doge.
semi-elected, but very powerful, though later on hemmed about by restrictions, leader of of Venice. So I think we'll have Doge Tucker Carlson the first. That's
There we go. That works for me. All right, I'm going to end the recording here. Oh well, plug. I'm sorry, plug away.
Oh yeah, so I'm Charles Haywood, and I write various things, including primarily book reviews, or rather, my thoughts masquerading as book reviews, as well as other pieces at The Worthy House, theworthyhouse.com. So check it out if you're interested.
Best intro music ever. I love that. Every time I listen to it, it's stuck in my head for days.
I'm glad.